Let's turn to voter ID. Nicki Minaj posted on X this week what sensible, forward-thinking, cutting-edge leading nation is having a debate on whether or not there should be voter ID. Like they're actually fighting not to have people present ID while voting for your leaders. Do you get it? Do you get it now? It's interesting. CNN has admitted that the majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj here.
83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
What about by party? What's the party breakdown?
Yeah, normally you might expect, hey, there'd be a big divide by party with Republicans really for it and Democrats really against it. But not really here. I mean, just take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. You got 95% of Republicans, pretty much all of them, but even 71% of Democrats favor photo ID to vote.
Nick, they're pretty big numbers.
Yeah, and it's consistent with the polls that we've done at Signal, too. It's always in the high 70s to low 80s. This is a bipartisan consensus type issue. And quite frankly, I'm glad that someone like Nicki Minaj, who's not day in and day out in politics, is speaking out about this, because the message that we're hearing from Democrats, it's frankly offensive to suggest that, Black voters and voters of color, can't get an ID, and thus we can't implement voter ID. Americans, we show ID to buy alcohol, to drive, to fly, to exercise our Second Amendment rights. And to suggest that Black voters don't have IDs is just frankly laughable and offensive.
Yeah. John, can I get your take?
Yeah, so Americans have generally lost confidence in the security and the integrity of our elections. And voter ID really kind of is symbolic. It stands for the desire to have more secure elections, and it always polls 75% or better. So why doesn't it pass? The Democrats actually tried to pass legislation to make it illegal for any state to require voter ID. Now, why would they take such an unpopular position? I think the only plausible answer is that voter fraud must be an important part of the Democrats' election strategy.
I want to talk to you both about the Epstein files. Of course, the DOJ released 3 million plus Epstein files last week. It appears as though Trump and JD Vance might have split on what happens next. Trump has said that it's time for the country to get on to something else. JD Vance told the Daily Mail that he'd be open to Andrew, that being former Prince Andrew, testifying before Congress. Nick, with the new release of these files, it's not all the files. There are still some millions actually being hidden away. But with this new release, how is this impacting politics? Do people really care about it, or do they agree with Trump? Do they want to move on?
Yeah, I think the releases thus far have been a major vindication for President Trump. Trump, who basically said, we were going to get into office, we're going to take a look, but concluded that there was really nothing there. I think what we're seeing is that the American voter, they're much more concerned about, the pocketbook issues, the economic issues, that's what's going to drive voters as they go to the polls here in 2026. But I think what's most telling about the lack of, anything in these files is just how quickly the Democrats have moved beyond their Trump Epstein, rhetoric and on to the next, anti-Trump conspiracy du jour. I think this is kind of a nothing burger for the average American, and it is somewhat amusing to me that the three names that are standing out there right now as caught up in the crossfire are Bill and Hillary Clinton, who may be called to testify in Congress, and then of course the former Prince Andrew.
John, what's your assessment, what you're hearing on the ground? Do people want more transparency, a proper investigation for this to continue to drag on? And ultimately, we do need to get to the bottom of it and as much truth as possible. Or do people really want to move on? Are people more concerned with the economy, crime rates? What's your sense on this?
Well, I think most people want to move on. I'm with President Trump on this one. The files do contain evidence of sleazy behavior. They're embarrassing to people like Bill Gates, but I think we should move on to more important issues. This is not a partisan matter. Epstein was a Democrat. His friends were mostly Democrats and academics. He hated Donald Trump, but I don't think there's value in embarrassing public figures, and I think it's time to move on to more substantial issues.
Okay, I want to turn to the growing tensions with Iran. The US and Iran will apparently be holding talks on Friday in Oman, according to CBS News. Now, this, of course, follows an incident earlier this week where we saw the US shoot down an Iranian drone that Caroline Leavitt said was acting aggressively towards a US aircraft carrier. Nick, what is happening here? Are the talks breaking down, or are we going to be getting peace, or are we going to be getting war?
Well, I think, President Trump is rightfully emboldened because he's found this America First ability to project power abroad and is showing the world that America First doesn't necessarily mean America isolated. And, if I'm the Ayatollah in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, I'm not sleeping well having watched what the United States and Israel were able to accomplish on our nuclear strikes on Iran. And certainly after the masterclass that President Trump put on capturing Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, I think somewhat paradoxically, this is the best and only opportunity that the Iranian regime is going to have to make a deal with President Trump. This isn't the Biden or the Obama administration where, they're going to be able to walk all over us and cross red lines. I think Trump's going to come to the table, or his representatives are going to come to the table in Oman, but the Iranian regime is going to have to be willing to make a deal that's not just to address their nuclear program, but also their wanton support of terrorism and their oppression of the Iranian people. And I just don't know if there's a deal to be had there for the despotic leaders of Iran.
Yeah, I don't know either. John, what's your assessment of where things are at the moment and where this is going?
Well, in my opinion, there is no point in negotiating with the mullahs. The Iranian people need regime change, and regime change is very much in the interest of the United States. The question is how to bring it about. Unpopular tyrants can stay in power longer than one would think possible. You look at Cuba, for example. It's very hard to overthrow a government if you aren't willing to use your own soldiers, which Trump clearly isn't. So I don't know whether there's any combination of airstrikes and economic pressure that will cause the mullah's government to fall. I hope so, but on paper, it should have fallen a long time ago. And so we'll have to see how this plays out.
We'll be watching it very closely. John Hinderaka, Center of the American Experiment President, and Nick Weinstein, Signal Principal and Pollster. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.